Well, hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us. We are here today with CDO Magazine interview series. I'm Denise Verdicchio with SHI International, and we're partnering with CDO Magazine, MIT, CDOIQ, and the International Society of Chief Data Officers in a series of interviews. And today I have the absolute pleasure of speaking with Dorothy Aronson, who is the CIO of the National Science Foundation. So Dorothy, welcome, and thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Denise. It's my pleasure.
What about some best practices on how to get your workforce and culture to move effectively towards transformational goals? So you kind of gave us this high level, maybe some practical, if you're talking to a leader of an organization who wants to go down this path, but they've never thought about it quite in the way that you just sort of gave us to think about, like, what are some practical steps they can do to just start?
So there's a lot, there are many facets to that. One is that the workforce isn't of one, it's diverse. The workforce is diverse. There's some people that are going to want to adopt change, and there are other people that are going to want to stay where they are.
Yeah.
So understanding, one of the things we did early on years ago when working with innovation was we identified different types of people. And so there are explorers. There are people that are out in front of me. I'm not the person who's on the bleeding edge, but there are people who, these people who just want the latest thing before
they're always
out. Okay. So there's these explorers, and I think of them as like Lewis and Clark going out into the wilderness. They don't know what's on the other side of the mountain. Then they're followed by pioneers. So pioneers are people that are in the covered wagon. So they're bringing their family along. You know what I mean? They're not risking everyone's lives and their lives. Well, it's dangerous, but it's not as bad as the pioneer. So the explorers go first, and you have to model your communications and outreach, and you're providing opportunities to the different types, the explorers, the pioneers. Then there's early adopters. There are a lot of them.
Yeah.
They follow the pioneers. The pioneers have established a world that they can imagine living in. It's safe. It has the equipment they need. They don't have to build everything from scratch. And then there's the general population, and then followed by the laggards. So by nature, I'm probably a laggard, but don't tell anyone. So no, you can. That's okay. So with those, by recognizing that there are these different kinds of people, and again, taking advantage of them, meeting them where they are, and saying, I know we experiment a lot. The experiments are performed by their explorers. When they succeed in accomplishing their intended purpose, then the pioneers are willing to follow, again, by word of mouth. And so one of the things, my practice is to bring these people together, to identify explorers and say, you're not, a lot of organizations see explorers as bad guys.
Yeah,
they're doing something they shouldn't do. No, you're pushing us in a direction we don't want to go in. But the problem is you can't stop them. So I like to engage them and use them and pull them together and say, okay, I know you don't want to talk to each other or to me, but I can do something for you. I can find if you succeed, I can find someone to take that over. Or I can find someone who will try it also in a different context. And so the explorers benefit from coming together periodically with my team and passing on their knowledge. You know what I mean? And it works that way all the way down the line. So it's about helping, being the catalyst to helping this natural transformation occur. That would be my recommendation. Now, of course, there's always the top-down stuff. There's always the agency that says, here's the law, or the federal government changes the law. And those things happen too, but they don't happen. They happen with more anxiety and frustration, but that's another way of definitely changing the culture.
Yeah. So I really love that framework that you laid out of very Little House on the Prairie, which I happen to be a fan of. But it's so easy to understand. And I think often in organizations, again, regardless of the topic, we often fail to consider those different sort of categories of people and then trying to meet them where they're at. And I love what you said about sort of bringing those explorers, bringing those people into the conversation. And probably by doing so, you're actually helping to move the people who are maybe not so much the laggards, but, the early adopters and beyond forward a little bit more, right?
Everyone watches that.
Yeah.
And if you don't if you turn them from sinister beings into people who might be who are taking their own risks for you, then it becomes less frightening. I
would imagine that at times too, they can showcase some really cool things that actually have an impact on people's day-to-day that they've done because they're an explorer, because they're out in front as well. Do you see that happening? Is that?
Oh, yeah. So we have a lot of, in fact, we had one this morning. We have meetings every other Friday where people share their innovations.
Love that.
And they share the product. This is innovations group. They share their innovations with others, and then they also show how they created them. Mm-hmm. So and then what happens next is at first people say, that's great, but it doesn't align with policy, or I'm not sure it's legal to do that, or I'm not sure it's secure. And so what we do with those experiments that are then shown to people, if they catch on, if someone says, yeah, but if it worked, if it was sanctioned by security, I would love to use that too. Yeah. We make those handoffs. So that is exactly what happens, is they showcase their stuff. We also have a system that allows them to provide called Hopper. And Hopper is like a shelf to put your innovations on. And it allows pioneers and early adopters access to the innovations so they can review them, they can comment on them. And we have a whole process for how we can label an experiment, how it can become nascent, and then in common use, right? And then enterprise-wide, and then integrated into the final systems. So we have a pipeline so that these innovations, if they succeed, and if they're generally necessary or satisfy a need in the agency, then we can invest more heavily in them and turn them into something that's integrated into everyone's world.
I love that idea. That is incredible.
It's named for Grace Hopper.
I love this. I mean, what an amazing way to encourage people to bring great ideas forward too. I mean, I think often they're everywhere within our organizations, but they're often hidden, or people don't feel like they are confident enough, or they have the access to come forward and bring their ideas forward. And this is just like phenomenal to have a platform like that to get the ideas into the community. That's really cool.
It's fun.
Yeah, I bet it is. Something about that feels right when thinking about that you are the National Science Foundation.
Exactly.
Too, right? Like it fits.
Exactly. Because the people that I work with, they are independent thinkers. They're always looking beyond the horizon. And, not all of them, but the ones who are, you can't stop them. You don't want to stop them.
Yeah, no.
So, right. It's an amazing place to work.
That's really cool. Thank you for that. I love that. So let's talk about cross-functional teams. I think often when people are thinking about digital transformation, they're thinking IT, right? Just like IT department or just this department. How important do you think it is to bring cross-functional teams together for that collaboration on digital transformation? And who leads the team? Who leads those cross-functional teams?
Well, I'm going to take that as two separate questions in a way, because I think that if you think about technologists, they are not necessarily they come to the table with technology expertise and not necessarily NSF cultural understanding, NSF expertise. So they want to build stuff. They want to work with technology. But if you think of them as people who don't know anything about the business, which is it's an exaggeration. They know a lot about the business, especially those who have been here a long time. Sometimes they know more than the people, who are just coming in, but they cannot actually function without a broad range of other people. And that's been true in technology for a while. In the IT world, we've always seen, well, we need a networking person, you need a hardware person, but it's far beyond that. We need, and the nature of teams have really changed. I mean, and this goes to the leadership thing. Yes, you need someone who has the business knowledge. You need someone who, in my mind, you need probably an early adopter, or you need to have someone who wants to move forward. It's also not bad to have a laggard, but you need people who know data, right? So to have diversity of thought at the table is absolutely critical, because what the IT person can say is the business person can say, oh, I know how I want that solved. And the IT person can say, well, that's a really expensive way to go, but there's a cheaper way to do it this way, or there's a more efficient way of doing it this way, or we can deploy something more quickly if we do, so it takes the multiple thoughts. And then, of course, there's the data element today is so complicated. Yes. And people imagine that the data is fit for their purpose just because we've collected it in the past. Yes. And that's also not true. So we definitely need people to bring the data from data, bits of bytes of information into useful information. And so all of those components are necessary. With respect to leadership, I find leadership is mostly about who does it, who picks it up and moves it forward, who wants it the most and has the ability to draw the people together and keep them together. So some of that can be learned. Traditionally at NSF, there was a lot of leadership that came from the IT department but now that people are, most end users have a very clear concept of what they want, and development tools are readily available. Yeah. So you no longer have to engage the IT team as early. I think you should, but you don't have to. These tools and your knowledge, just using your phone, knowing how to drag and drop and create a PowerPoint presentation, you can create an application just as easily, with the right tools. So, we have to, you don't have to start with IT anymore. You can come to IT later in the game if you want to engage in a broader scale, if you require broad agency-wide communication. But if you're building something that's just for you, or you 2 or 3 people in your community, you might really not have to engage IT.
I think it's such a different way of thinking about choosing a leader for a project that you just said, which is not just choosing a leader because this department historically has run projects like this, or, that's just who, maybe again, in the business sense, it seems to fit, but more choosing the right leader for the right organization, for the right project, for digital transformation, and getting someone who can bring all those parties to the table. That perspective is actually, I've never thought about it that way.
It's very important as a person who's in a leadership position, as a leader, it's very important to let the right person be in that position. Yeah. And you can't, I don't usually go into a discussion like this with a preconceived notion of who the right person is, because that biases me. It's territorial in a way. And I feel like that is not helpful. The first thing is to solve the problem. How are we going to get to the end? Who's willing to pick this up and carry it through? Who's willing to put their time into it? Possibly, because every one of these projects, they have risk. So the person who takes it forward has to have the energy to fail and try again. Yes. It can't be prescribed easily.
Let me just say thank you, Dorothy. It was a real honor to be able to have a conversation with you today, really, very much so. So thanks for joining me today. And for all of those out there, please visit cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews. Thanks so much, Dorothy. Bye, everybody.